Was this letter that went out on Tuesday of last week purportedly by the Kenya Wildlife Service true or false? It got a response from the leader of opposition, though.
Watu wa Kenya Wildlife wameandikia Joho barua ati yeye ametumia jina ya Simba. Jina Simba. Aende huko aseme hiyo jina Simba lipatwa na nani.
Well, on April Fool's Day, I'm sure you probably got pranked by a friend or two, but you probably didn't expect this from mainstream media. 3 papers, we selected some of the articles that they carried some stories that were actually April Fool's stories, pranks. And just as well, actually, yesterday was the International Fact-Checking Day. Perhaps not by coincidence, it comes right after April Fool's Day. A lot to verify right after the pranks that go on. And I'll start with that very last highlight that we had, and that is the use of some of fake stories on the dailies on April 1st. That was Saturday. I'll start with one who was an editor here and has done it before. What justifies the use of these fake stories, Catherine?
I think it used to be a fun thing to do on April Fools.
Yeah.
I think it's been a tradition for many years. But right now, I think it's lost its reason to be. I mean, whatever reason or whatever motivation there existed then to kind of lighten the newspaper on one day of the year, right, to be off the track, like to talk about, to be satirical in a way also, but not really serious. I think it lost that flavor now because with the internet, anybody can access a lot of information, and right, there's a lot of misinformation actually happening also in mainstream. So it becomes difficult for people to actually ID whether the story you're playing up as a prank is true, because some of it looks true, much more
than what we already are showing.
Actually, much more believable than some of the real stories that we might be actually reading or listening to or watching. So its time is past, I think.
I don't know what you think. You probably can see that if my director will run what we have there set apart as the cutaways of the clips. Some of the pages that were shown in some of the papers. Not what I'm looking at here. That's a bit twisted. You'll get the viewers to have kind of a painful neck. Yeah, these are the stories. Envoys oppose North Korean missile base in Kenya. That was the Saturday Nation. And we have state imports doctors after all. And of course, this was by the Standard. And from the Star, MPs approved D- as college entry grade at midnight. Although the tagline there is Siamini Kitwatu. You probably didn't read that, the tagline there. Leo, what do you think?
I mean, these interesting April Fool's spoofs were plays on actual real issues going on around the moment. You think about the issue with the D- being approved as an entry-level to college. That's something very relevant considering that there's been this tussle about whether Joho has real papers or not. The issue about the doctors being imported after all. I mean, these are supposed to be on a light note, but they're playing on some emotions that, I mean, they have already been stirred by current issues. So I think we need to be a bit careful about how we place them, and I hope that some of these media houses did go out there and actually inform people that these were April Fool's jokes, because, I mean, it may be obvious to some of us, but you never know.
John, what do you think? I don't know if you came across any one of them.
Well, you know, the one thing I always ask myself is, how is this still a thing? I think April Fool's, yeah, in this day and age, because long time ago probably it used to be fun, and so now there's even marketing for April Fool's Day, so people already know it's coming. So I think it's more of this has run its course. Right. Maybe it just needs to die away.
Alphonce, while here at the Daily Nation or at the Standard, did you do this, or probably even laugh? Probably even laugh at a story and how it got some people.
All right. In my earlier life, I wrote yeah. I wrote such stories for Taifa Leo and for the Daily Nation. But when you look at the way things are now, where with the internet, nearly everyone is a publisher, nearly everyone is a journalist. So there is so much out there that is misinforming people.
Yes.
And if you write a fake story so beautifully, the way these 3 pieces were written, the urge to share those pieces increases. So if you check the Nation story, it was, by the last time I looked at it, it had been shared 398 times or something like that. And it's shocking.
Right.
Yes, so it's a fake story, but it's being shared.
And Philip, you might tell us why it seems that either we can say the viewer, the consumer likes this kind of sensational story based on how much it is shared. They actually get a lot of clicks.
Yes, I think we are a society that's driven by such sensational headlines. And coming from a digital front, April Fool's Day is daily. It's an every day.
That's a good one, Philip. Now let's move on to another thing. So I guess it is by consensus here that in this day and age, April Fool's stories shouldn't really appear on the platforms that you expect to get credible stories, unless in some practices where they would actually correct almost immediately and say, okay, that was a prank we were playing on you, but still.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is now the biggest problem, because we have a lot of genuine stories, quote unquote. They are not April Fool's Day spoofs or whatever, but they are actually genuine stories that have been written which contain a lot of misinformation. And the problem is that we are not correcting them when we find out that we've actually made a mistake. And I don't mean here like with a correction in terms of spelling or titles or whatever. We're actually talking about misinforming people about facts. We're twisting what we know to suit certain whatever agendas, or if you want to call it. But we are not quick enough to actually correct or to fact check whatever we've put out. So at the beginning, we are very quick to share all manner of stuff, but we are very slow to correct. And when it's pointed out, it takes even longer.
Or we go on the defense. But there's something else. I mean, it's not just the media houses or journalists that are victim to or use the fake sources to propagate the news of the same, but also our leaders. And this is an example that started last week. If you probably came across it in your numerous WhatsApp groups, this was a letter from, purportedly from the Kenya Wildlife Service addressed to the governor of Mombasa and questioning his use of the title Simba 001 in a form of summon, actually claiming this title does not fit. It came across or came through to the leader of opposition, Raila Odinga, who gave a response without even verifying how true this was.
Simba. Now they are summoning him to Kenya Wildlife on the 9th to explain how he acquired that name Simba. Another harassment.
Ati sasa watu wa Kenya Wildlife wameandikia Joho barua ati yeye ametumia jina ya Simba. Ati yeye ni Simba. Aende huko aseme hiyo jina ya Simba lipate na hiyo si ni upuzi, lakini haya yote ni dalili ya kwamba Jubilee wamepanic. Jubilee wamepanic, sivyo? Na sisi tunaendelea mbele, sivyo? Asi mko tayari? Mko tayari? Vijana mko tayari? Vijana tidding.
I don't know whether Raila meant Tibim or Tidim, but anyway, as you probably saw there in the clip, granted, he probably didn't have enough time to verify because he was just shown it as he was given an address and gave his immediate response. But you can imagine how many times this happens with other stories that give response or get responses from our leaders, and then there's a cycle, a back and forth. And the person on the ground doesn't know how to differentiate this, whether true or false. Baba amesema.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Baba amesema without even checking. I mean, Baba amesema has just been shown a letter. First of all, even looking at it, you just see immediately that there is something wrong with it. Because other than just the letterhead, The rest of it, even the ref number, there's no ref number, there's nothing at that. So immediately you should be able to say, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Mm-hmm. And then the worst is that he's not even going to go back and say, oh shit, I was spoofed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry guys, I did not get the right information, I misinformed you. He's not going to go to be man enough to do that. And the person who misinformed him in the beginning just because he wanted to share quickly is not going to take responsibility. Right. Somebody has to take responsibility in this instance. It's just like you. When you're given something and it looks funny and you just share as received, you need to take responsibility. You need to start asking yourself, is what I'm sharing true, or how close is it to a lie? Right. And why should I pass it on?
Yeah,
I mean,
Leo, you laugh at this probably because you can see this is definitely lies, but it's not the same response or reception everywhere across the country. Yeah. How does this reach you in time? Okay, you're a data scientist. There's no data there. Well, probably there is. If you look at you know how credible that particular letter is, you could do some forensics or whatever.
No,
but yeah.
I mean, as Catherine is mentioning, that it's very responsible for someone who wields such influence over the masses to go out there and comment on stories without necessarily verifying. This is something we're seeing elsewhere in the world, whereby recently Trump quoted Fox News about like Obama being tapped, and that's been a story has been unable to rescind. And so as we move towards an election year, I think we need to be, towards the elections in August, we need to be a bit more careful with what we tell people, because again, we don't want to unnecessarily stir emotions one way or the other. And I mean, this, you're right, there are numbers, there are very various ways that you could actually verify this information before going out there and taking a stand, making a claim, or insisting that something is factual when actually it's not. And given that media houses that broadcast such messages are probably the first and the last line of information for several Kenyans, it's quite concerning when even such clips are shown on air, because we are pushing towards misinformation and we are propagating it instead of actually taking a step back and saying, hey, this is not right.
Speaking of emotions, John, I don't know what you think about what Francis Mbate says. Here, Raila is playing politics, and there's nothing wrong with him advancing his interest using propaganda. I mean, we just introduced it as something that was based on a fake story, but you can see the responses that come out.
I think in terms of what politicians say and how the public takes them, I think it's become pretty common that there's an acceptance among the public that when a politician says something, then tomorrow we expect the politician on the other side to give a response. In a way, that seems like a fact check of some sort. So if politician X says this, and then tomorrow politician Y gives an answer, if I believe in politician Y, then that for me is the correct thing. And the best example of this, just to fall back a bit into what I know best, is this whole discussion that has been going on about how much money certain counties have received through national transfer since devolution started, and how that played out in the public. So the president says Mombasa has received 40 billion shillings and Governor Joho should show how he's used that money. Then a few days later, the governor comes up and says, actually, we didn't receive 40 billion shillings. It's, I think, 17 billion shillings. Please give me the 23 billion shillings balance. And that is an opportunity, I think, now for the media, and please allow me to go after the media here, is an opportunity for the media to say exactly then what is the right number.
Right.
And when we don't do that, then the roller coaster goes on, because what happened after Joho gave his numbers, then a few days later, I think Shabal and his running mate came up again and said, oh, we have some audit reports that show actually it's 40-something billion shillings.
Right.
So that keeps going on. And the politicians, I think in some way, they've kind of come to a settlement that they know they want to be fact-checked. So that just keeps rolling. But then the public, who of course depend a lot on the media in terms of the information they get, then are left lost on, so what is the right What is the right fit?
Let me stop you on that one, because this is what we really will get into after we take a quick break. But I want a quick response from Alphonse. As mentioned by Leo, should we then not air, even with the caveat of this was misinformation, should we then not air these such pronouncements such as what Raila was responding to?
A journalist's responsibility is to report what happens. This happened. So you report it accurately, but you put it into context. Now this, the first role you do as a journalist, and this is a skill that you gain as you work, is whenever you see something, you ask, is it true? Is it false? Or is it a spin? Those are the things you ask yourself. So the moment you see the former Prime Minister being briefed about a letter from the KWS, you see that story, if you air it just that way, that Raila responded to a fake KWS letter, where is the voice of KWS saying that letter is fake? Yes. So put that into context and tell the viewer that he responded to this letter, but we have since found out that KWS spokesperson XYZ said this thing is fake. The first thing we do as I do as a journalist, and we do at Africa Checkers, fact checkers, we ask, where is the evidence?
Okay.
Yes, how do we prove this? Yes, so if you can't prove it, go out, find data that supports it. If there is no data, there is nothing, then it's probably nonsense. And
there's some examples we'll look at in terms of fact-checking the State of the Nation address and the alternative State of the Nation address. Just before I take a break, I'm under pressure from my director. Ogola, we might not air it, but it will find its way in social media. Should we still be worried? Is there a way of stopping the effect?
There's something called dark social, which is quite vibrant in Kenya right now, which is the likes of WhatsApp, the chat apps. That letter actually was viral on WhatsApp first. And that's only an icing on the cake. We have letters from press statements from both political sides, which do rounds online.
Yes.
So, but it actually goes to show that the digital team from both camps don't verify stuff.
Right.
And I think they actually do it's more of a digital propaganda from both sides.
And there's plenty of that.
It's a lot.
Yes. All the more reason that media has to check. Media has to interrogate some of these statements. I mean, for example, running that after what happened with the letter and then whatever Raila said, even airing that but putting in, like Shiundu said, putting it out there that we've talked to KWS and they've confirmed that this is not true, in itself would have been a service. It's the same thing as you're saying, John. Before you run that story where he says it's 40 billion, not, it's not 40 billion, it's so much. Just check.
Yeah. But
I mean, it's a simple
honestly,
thing.
The more interesting bite would be Raila's response, and you know the humor he throws in.
Exactly, but that doesn't mean it's true, and therefore you put whatever he's saying, but put it in context, and at the same time, correct the misstatements, because he's not telling the truth.
Okay, just quickly.
I think it's easy to actually cross-verify some of this information. When the data surfaced online, it was just quickly to run through the digital channels of KWS. There was no post from them. So I think media should actually have a cross-verification team. So anything which is viral, they have to actually go offline and actually verify.
All right. Thank you.